Once upon a time, in a land called Canaan, there was a young man named Joseph. He was the 11th son of Jacob, the beloved son of his old age. His father loved him so much that he gave him a beautiful coat of many colors. This coat made Joseph's brothers very jealous because they felt that their father loved Joseph more than them. Joseph didn't help matters much. He had dreams that he shared with his brothers. In one dream, he saw himself and his brothers gathering sheaves of grain, and his sheaf stood tall while theirs bowed down to it. In another dream, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down to him. His brothers didn't like this at all. "Do you really think you'll rule over us?" they sneered. Their hearts burned with anger and envy. One day, when Joseph went to visit his brothers who were tending sheep in the fields, they saw him coming from a distance, wearing his colorful coat. They whispered to one another, "Here comes the dreamer. Let's get rid of him." At first, they thought about killing him, but then, the eldest brother, Reuben, said, "Let's not kill him. We can throw him into this pit instead and leave him there to die. That way, we won't be guilty of his blood." So, they grabbed Joseph, tore off his coat, and threw him into a deep, dark pit. While they ate their lunch, they saw a caravan of traders coming from Gilead, heading toward Egypt. Judah, one of Joseph's brothers, had an idea. "What if we sell Joseph to these traders instead of leaving him in the pit to die? That way, we can make some money, and we won't have to hurt him." The brothers agreed, and so they sold Joseph to the traders for 20 pieces of silver. The traders took Joseph to Egypt, far away from his family, and the brothers went home, covered in guilt. They dipped Joseph's coat in goat's blood and showed it to their father, Jacob, making him believe that Joseph had been killed by a wild animal. Jacob was heartbroken. He mourned for his son and refused to be comforted, saying, "I will go to my grave mourning for Joseph." But God had a different plan for Joseph. Even though his life seemed to be falling apart, God was with him every step of the way. In Egypt, Joseph was sold to a wealthy man named Potiphar, who was the captain of Pharaoh's guard. Joseph worked hard, and soon Potiphar noticed how talented and trustworthy he was. Potiphar made Joseph the overseer of his entire house. Everything Joseph touched seemed to prosper, and Potiphar was blessed because of him. But then, Potiphar's wife noticed Joseph. He was young, handsome, and strong, and she wanted him to sin with her. Joseph, however, remembered God's command to live a pure life, and he refused. "How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" he said. When she tried to force him, Joseph ran away, but in her anger, Potiphar's wife accused him of trying to hurt her. Potiphar believed his wife's lies and had Joseph thrown into prison. But even in prison, God did not forget Joseph. Joseph gained the trust of the prison warden and was put in charge of all the prisoners. He worked hard, and everything Joseph did, God blessed. One day, 2 men who served Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, were thrown into prison. They were the king's cupbearer and baker. While in prison, they each had a strange dream. Joseph, who had the gift of interpreting dreams, offered to help them. The cupbearer's dream meant that he would be restored to his position, and the baker's dream meant that he would be executed. Everything happened just as Joseph had said. Before the cupbearer left, Joseph asked him, "When you are restored to your position, please remember me. Tell Pharaoh about me, so I can be set free." But the cupbearer forgot all about Joseph. 2 long years passed before Pharaoh had a dream. He dreamed that 7 fat cows were eaten by 7 thin cows, and 7 healthy ears of grain were swallowed by 7 withered ears. No one in Egypt could interpret the dream, and Pharaoh was troubled. Then, the cupbearer remembered Joseph. "There is a man in prison who can interpret dreams," he said. So, Joseph was brought before Pharaoh. Joseph listened to Pharaoh's dream and, by the power of God, he understood it. He told Pharaoh that the 7 fat cows and the 7 healthy ears of grain meant 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. Joseph advised Pharaoh to store up food during the years of plenty, so Egypt would survive the famine. Pharaoh was amazed by Joseph's wisdom. Can we find anyone else like this man, in whom is the Spirit of God? Pharaoh asked. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has shown you all this, there is no one as wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people will submit to your orders. Only I will be greater than you." Joseph was made the second most powerful man in all of Egypt. He was given new clothes, a gold chain, and a signet ring, a symbol of his authority. He rode in a chariot and was honored by the people. Joseph's life had been turned around, from a prisoner to a ruler in Egypt, all because he trusted God and remained faithful, even when life seemed unfair. The famine came, just as Joseph had predicted. People from all over came to Egypt to buy food, including Joseph's brothers. They didn't recognize Joseph, but Joseph recognized them. He could have punished them for what they had done to him, but instead, he chose to test their hearts. Joseph accused them of being spies and demanded that they bring their youngest brother, Benjamin, to prove they were honest. After much hardship, they returned to Egypt with Benjamin. When Joseph saw his brother, he could hardly contain his emotions. He ordered that a feast be prepared for them and secretly placed a silver cup in Benjamin's sack. When his brothers were caught with the cup, Joseph made it seem as though Benjamin would be enslaved, but then he revealed his true identity to them. "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery. But don't be upset. It was God's plan all along. He sent me here to save lives."